At the prestigious Saintford High School, a group of young people believed that money could buy respect, and that their laughter was above any consequence. But when they mocked the wrong student, fate decided to show that a person's true worth lies not in what they wear, but in what they carry in their heart. Before discovering what happened the next day, and how karma acted so relentlessly, subscribe to the channel and leave a like, because here, every action has a price, and sometimes the bill arrives faster than you imagine. That's Saintford High, at one of the most expensive and prestigious schools in California. Money spoke louder than any rules. Children of businessmen, politicians, and celebrities walked the halls as if they were on catwalks, flaunting arrogance and privilege. At the center of this small empire of ego and status was Logan Whitmore, the leader of the most popular group in school. Handsome, athletic, heir to a luxury hotel chain. Wherever he went, the others followed. Around him were Chase, the funny one who mocked everyone to feel accepted; Brittany, the girl who always filmed the pranks to post on social media; and Ryan, the right-hand man, the kind of friend who laughed at mean things so as not to become the target of them. Together, they formed a feared group, not for what they did, but for what they could do with impunity. It all started on a Monday morning, when Elijah Carter, a new student, transferred from a rural public school, entered the Saintford gate for the first time. His new uniform still smelled of soap, and his shoes, though clean, were not designer brands. He carried a battered backpack and a worn notebook in his hands, but what really caught the eye was his calm, sincere smile, which contrasted with the competitive environment around him. As soon as Elijah walked down the main hallway, he heard the muffled laughter of Logan's group. "Look who's here," Chase murmured. "The school's new charity." Brittany picked up her phone, already discreetly recording. "It'll be good for our TikTok channel," she whispered, laughing. Logan watched Elijah for a few seconds and, with a cold smile, said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Hey, champ, are you lost? The public school is 2 streets down." The group's laughter echoed down the hallway. Elijah stopped, looked at them, and calmly replied, "No, I'm exactly where I should be." The silence lasted a second, and then came more laughter. But that response planted a seed of discomfort. Logan didn't like being challenged, especially not by someone who, in his eyes, didn't belong there. In the following days, the group began a series of provocations disguised as jokes. They would trade her lunch for leftovers, hide her backpack, make comments about her appearance, and Brittany would record everything, editing the videos with ironic captions and funny music. The videos began circulating among the students with the title, "The Scholarship Recipient of the Week." Elijah pretended not to care. He walked with his head held high, greeted the teachers, got good grades, and avoided confrontations. But each laugh echoed deeply, not as an offense, but as a reminder that prejudice can wear expensive clothes and still remain small. That Friday, however, something changed. During recess, Logan and the group decided to take the prank further. They spread a false story that Elijah had stolen a watch from a student, and before he could defend himself, the principal called him in. While the young man tried to explain, Logan smiled at the end of the hallway, satisfied. But what he didn't know was that, at that exact moment, a school camera was recording the entire setup, and that the next day, the lesson that fate had in store for them would change everything, forever. Monday dawned gray over the luxurious rooftops of Saintford High. It was as if the heavens themselves sensed what was to come. Elijah arrived early, as always, with the same calm step and determined gaze. But as soon as he passed through the gate, he noticed something different. Eyes were fixed on him, gazes that mixed curiosity and judgment. On the school's digital bulletin board, a notice caught the eye. "Student under investigation for theft of belongings." Next to it, a photo of the gold watch of Logan Whitmore, valued at thousands of dollars. Elijah's name didn't appear, but it wasn't necessary. Everyone knew what it was about. As she walked down the hallway, she heard whispers. It was him. Stealing a watch like that? How shameful. It's always the same. They put a scholarship student in and expect him to behave like the others. Elijah felt his face burn, but he kept his step steady. Deep down, I already knew who was behind this. In the principal's office, Senior Thompson, the disciplinary coordinator, awaited him with a stern expression. "Mr. Carter, do you know why you're here?" Elijah took a deep breath. "I imagine it's about the clock." "Exactly. Student Logan Whitmore reported that you were seen near your desk in the locker room shortly before the object disappeared." "That's a lie," Elijah replied firmly. "I never touched his things." The coordinator crossed his arms. "We have a witness who confirms this." Elijah's eyes widened. "Who?" "Chase Andrews." That was enough to understand that it was all part of a hoax. Chase, Logan's inseparable friend, smiled when he saw injustice. And now, with the support of the group's popularity, his words carried more weight than any truth. Meanwhile, in the other wing of the school, Logan watched everything from the classroom window, laughing with his classmates. "He's going to be suspended before lunch," Brittany said, holding her cell phone. "I told you it would be fun," Logan replied. "Now let's see if he'll still be walking around with that saintly air about him." But what they didn't know was that the fun was about to turn into a disaster. In the principal's office, the coordinator decided to call the local police, following school protocol. Elijah was in shock. "Are you going to call the police over a lie?" "Those are the rules, Carter. Until proven otherwise, you're the prime suspect." The boy closed his eyes, fighting back tears, not out of fear, but out of frustration. It was as if the world was telling him again what he had been trying to deny, that for some, skin color still mattered more than any proof. Before being taken away, a cleaning employee knocked on the door. "Excuse me, Mr. Thompson," he said in a low voice. "I think I found something in the locker room." In the palm of his hand, he held a small metal box. Inside it, the watch. "It was in locker number 12, the man added. The coordinator found it strange. "Locker 12? But that locker belongs to—" He checked the form quickly. "Logan Whitmore." The silence that filled the room was almost palpable. Elijah stared intently at the coordinator, who was now frowning in confusion. "Mr. Carter, you may leave for now. We need to check something." Elijah left without saying a word. Outside, the hallway seemed lighter, but only for a few minutes. Within hours, the rumor had spread in reverse. Now, everyone wanted to know if Logan had made it all up. The videos, the laughter, the humiliations. Suddenly, they lost their luster. That night, the principal received a call. It was Robert Whitmore, Logan's father, furious. "My son was unfairly exposed," he shouted. But the principal's response disarmed him. "Mr. Whitmore, the school has reviewed the security camera footage. The watch never left your son's locker. We will have a meeting tomorrow with everyone involved." As the man hung up, Logan felt the ground slip from under his feet. The game was over, and the next day promised to be the longest of his life. The following dawn fell upon the Saintford High like a silent sentence. The sun timidly streamed through the patio windows, and the atmosphere, normally noisy and lively, was different. The news had already spread. The watch had never been stolen, and now everyone wanted to know what would happen to Logan and his group. Elijah arrived early, as always, head held high. The weight he had carried in his chest in recent days had lessened, but there was still pain in his eyes. Injustice, even when undone, leaves invisible scars. Some students greeted him shyly, others looked away, ashamed. The difference was that this time, he didn't need to defend himself. The truth already spoke for itself. In the main hallway, Logan walked briskly, trying to ignore the stares. Brittany followed him, her cell phone tucked in her pocket, too afraid to record anything. Chase came right behind, silent, unlike the cocky boy he usually was. "Dude, this will pass," Chase murmured. "Pass?" Logan replied, barely concealing his nervousness. "My father is furious. He said this story has tarnished the family name. If the principal makes a formal report, I could even lose my sports scholarship." "You should have thought of that before," Brittany said without looking at him. They walked in silence to the principal's office door. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The principal, the disciplinary coordinator, the 3 members of the group, and Elijah were present. In the corner of the room, a laptop displayed images from the security cameras. "Let's begin," the director said firmly. "The recordings show that the watch never left Mr. Whitmore's closet. There was no theft, but there was a lie." Logan opened his mouth to reply, but she interrupted him. "And there was defamation. A student was publicly accused of a crime he did not commit. This is serious, and it will have consequences." She looked directly at him. "Is there anything you'd like to say before I refer the case to the board?" Logan hesitated. For a moment he tried to maintain his usual haughty gaze, but he couldn't. The mask began to crack. "I didn't think it would go this far. It was just a joke." Elijah watched him in silence. The director leaned slightly forward. "A prank that almost destroyed someone's reputation. And that could have involved the police. Do you find that funny, Mr. Whitmore?" Logan lowered his head. "No, ma'am." Brittany, with tears in her eyes, finally spoke. "It was his idea. But I also messed up. I recorded everything and posted it. I wanted people to laugh." The principal shook her head, disappointed. "Laughing at the humiliation of others has never been entertainment. It's cowardice." The coordinator then stood up and placed a disciplinary report on the table. "All three are suspended indefinitely, and all videos posted must be deleted immediately." Chase tried to argue, but the principal was firm. "Words hurt as much as actions, and you will have enough time to reflect on that." She then looked at Elijah. "Mr. Carter, the school owes you a formal apology, not just to you, but to your family. What happened was unacceptable." Elijah took a deep breath and replied calmly, "Thank you, ma'am. I don't want anyone to lose anything because of me. I just want them to understand what it's like to be judged for something you didn't do." The sincerity in his voice disarmed everyone. Even Logan, who was trying to remain impassive, couldn't contain the regret that was beginning to grow inside him. The meeting ended in silence. When they left the room, the hallways were crowded. Everyone knew what had happened inside, and for the first time, it wasn't the rich and popular who commanded the attention. It was Elijah, but he didn't seem proud, just serene. As he walked past his colleagues, he heard whispers of respect, timid apologies, and even the silence of those who had learned a lesson without needing words. That afternoon, Elijah was called to the auditorium for a special meeting. The professors had decided to do something unprecedented, a student assembly about prejudice, privilege, and empathy. The school, which had previously ignored the problem, now wanted to talk about it. And when the microphone was passed to Elijah, the boy took a deep breath and said, "What happened to me wasn't just about a watch. It was about the rush to believe the worst in people because of who they are. And that is the real theft. It steals trust, peace, and the right to be seen as an equal." The silence was absolute. Nobody dared to laugh, record, or comment. Because, at that moment, everyone understood. The boy they had tried to humiliate was, in fact, the only one there, who had behaved like a true leader. The days following the meeting were a whirlwind for the Saintford High. The story spread through the city like wildfire. Within hours, students' social media was flooded with comments, posts, and debates. Brittany's videos, which had previously been a source of laughter and likes, were now being used as evidence of the group's cruelty. People outside the school began commenting, "Is this the future of the elite? The shame of Saintford? How can anyone find this funny?" The school, which has always maintained an impeccable reputation, has made headlines on local news portals. The name Logan Whitmore it featured headlines with titles such as "Son of Tycoon Accused of Bullying and False Accusation at Elite School." Meanwhile, Elijah tried to lead a normal life, but normalcy seemed to have become a distant memory. At every corridor he crossed, he received glances of admiration and respect, the same glances that had previously judged him. Teachers apologized for not having noticed before, and students who had laughed now approached him with regret. But he didn't smile. He just thanked them and moved on. "You've become a symbol," the professor told him, Carter, during the break. "But I know that's not what you wanted." Elijah shook his head. "I just wanted to study in peace. I didn't want to prove anything to anyone." Meanwhile, Logan's life was silently crumbling. The suspension sidelined him from the football team and his sports. Scholarship was frozen. The brands that sponsored him withdrew their support. His once loyal friends now avoided him. Even Chase and Brittany stopped replying to his messages. For the first time, he was experiencing the bitter taste of exclusion, and he realized what he had done to others. One afternoon, he returned to school for a disciplinary meeting, and, as he crossed the gate, he saw something that made him stop. On the main bulletin board, there was a new poster, handmade, with large, bold, letters. Dignity is worth more than luxury. Below is a photo of Elijah smiling, surrounded by colleagues. The impact was immediate. Logan stood there, staring blankly, unable to move. In the auditorium, Director Helen officially announced the new measures, the creation of a code of social conduct which would include actions against discrimination, racism, and workplace harassment. She gave a speech in front of the entire school. This episode showed us what happens when empathy is forgotten. Saintford High will not be remembered for the mistake, but for the courage to confront it. The audience applauded, and Elijah, seated in the front rows, looked at Logan, who was huddled in the back, like a ghost of the arrogant boy he once was. After the ceremony, Logan approached hesitantly. "Elijah." The other looked up calmly. "What do you want, Logan?" I just wanted to apologize. I messed everything up, and I don't even know why." Elijah watched him silently for a moment. "Do you know what's worse than making a mistake?" "What?" "Thinking that mistakes have no consequences." Logan lowered his head, ashamed. "I thought it was funny, that it didn't hurt. Bullying always hurts. Only those who have never experienced it think it's mild." The two fell silent. There was something heavy, yet necessary, hanging between them, as if this dialogue were the closing of a cycle. "I don't want you to suffer what I suffered," Elijah said finally, "but I want you to never again make another person feel less than you feel now." The words affected Logan more than any punishment. "I promise," he replied, his voice choked with emotion. On that day, the group that was once a symbol of power and popularity became a living example of what ego and insensitivity can destroy. The laughter that echoed through the hallways was replaced by conversations about empathy, respect, and change. Saintford High was beginning to rebuild, not with luxury or money, but with conscience. And Elijah, the boy who arrived there discredited, became the living reminder that the truth doesn't need force to win, only time to be heard. The following weeks brought a different kind of silence to the corridors of Saintford High, a silence of reflection. The sound of mocking laughter faded, replaced by hushed conversations and more attentive glances. For the first time, that elite school seemed to understand what it truly meant to coexist. Elijah, now respected by all, walked through the hallways and was greeted with sincere waves. The prejudice that had previously hid in the subtext of jokes had given way to admiration, but inside him there was still a knot, the kind of wound that doesn't bleed but takes a long time to heal. He didn't want to be the symbol of the school, nor the kid who proved a point. He just wanted to ensure that no one else had to go through what he went through, and it was with this purpose that, when the director invited him to participate in a new project called Equal Voices, Elijah accepted without hesitation. The proposal was simple: weekly meetings between students to discuss prejudice, empathy, and coexistence. At the first meeting, the auditorium was half empty. Only 20 students showed up, some curious and others genuinely interested. But what no one expected was that among those present was Logan Whitmore. When Elijah saw him, his heart tightened. For a moment, he wanted to leave. But then he immediately remembered his father's words: "Forgiving is not forgetting. It's choosing not to repeat the hatred." Logan sat in the last row, huddled up, almost invisible. During the meeting, Elijah spoke about how he felt. "People think bullying is just a joke, but it destroys. Sometimes not on the outside, but on the inside. I spent nights wondering if I should come back here the next day. And the worst part is that nobody defended me, because everyone was afraid of being the next target." The silence was heavy. Elijah took a deep breath and continued. But I learned something from all this. Power isn't about humiliating others. It's about being able to change, even after making mistakes. At that moment, Logan timidly raised his hand. Everyone turned around. Can I speak? He asked. Elijah nodded. I was a coward, he began. And I'm not saying that to ease my guilt. I never thought about what the other person felt. I grew up thinking that money and popularity made me untouchable. But when I lost everything, I realized I had nothing real. And what Elijah did, forgiving me, listening to me, was the first time someone treated me like a real human being. The words broke him. His voice failed him. Brittany, who was also present, was wiping away tears. Chase was looking down, ashamed. When Logan finished, the auditorium fell silent for a few seconds, until the applause began. Shy at first, then intense. These were not applauses of admiration, but of liberation. At the end of the meeting, Elijah approached Logan. What you did today was brave. Courageous is what you do every day, Logan replied sincerely. From that point on, something began to change. Logan became actively involved in the Equal Voices project. He helped organize debates, invited other students, and even wrote an essay about regret that was published in the school newspaper. The group, which previously spread fear, now spreads awareness. The transformation was so profound that within a few months, Saintford High became a benchmark in anti-bullying initiatives. Other schools began to copy the model, and Elijah was invited to represent the institution at state events. In an interview with the local newspaper, he said, I didn't want to be remembered as the victim. I wanted to be remembered as proof that forgiveness can heal what humiliation destroys. His words went viral. And that same week, Logan sent a message to Elijah. You taught me that character is what remains when pride disappears. Thank you. Elijah responded with just a handshake emoji, not because it was insignificant, but because, sometimes, peace needs no more words. That day, as he left school, he looked at the building illuminated by the sunset and smiled. The same place that once made him doubt himself was now proof that even the soil of injustice can flourish, if someone has the courage to plant the truth. Autumn has arrived in Saintford High with a different glow. Orange leaves covered the gardens, and the cool wind carried with it a feeling of new beginnings. The school, which had once been a stage for arrogance and prejudice, was now a living example of transformation. The project, Equal Voices. It had spread like a silent flame of empathy, and everyone, from teachers to parents, was talking about it. Elijah walked calmly through the corridors. He was no longer the insecure boy trying to prove his worth. He was a respected, admired, and above all, listened to name. But what motivated him wasn't personal. Recognition. It was seeing the change happening before his very eyes. One morning, Principal Helen called him into her office. Elijah, sit down. I have something I need to show you. She handed over a sealed envelope bearing the letterhead of California Department of Education. Opening it is up to you, she said with a discreet smile. Inside the envelope, an official letter. Precious Elijah Carter, in recognition of your exemplary contribution to promoting equality, ethics, and empathy within the school environment, the Department of Education awards you the Young Citizen of Honor Award 2025. Elijah remained silent. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. They really chose me? They chose the boy who transformed pain into dialogue, the principal replied. In the following days, the announcement spread. The local press returned to the school to conduct interviews, but this time, not to talk about scandals, but about overcoming challenges. The students were thrilled with the news. The auditorium was prepared for a special ceremony, attended by parents, authorities, and alumni. On the big day, the atmosphere was filled with emotion. The packed audience rose to their feet when Elijah took the stage, dressed in a simple yet elegant suit. Logan and Brittany were in the front rows, visibly moved. Elijah's father, a hard-working man who rarely took time off, was also there, his eyes brimming with pride. The presenter announced, "Today, we honor a young man whose courage and integrity remind us that true greatness lies not in those who win, but in those who inspire others to change. With you, Elijah Carter. Applause filled the auditorium. Elijah took a deep breath, approached the microphone, and began. When I entered this school, I just wanted to study. I never imagined I would end up learning so much. Not about formulas or dates, but about people. I experienced what many call injustice, and for a while I believed that this would define me. But I learned that it's not what they do to us that defines us. It's what we choose to do with what they did to us. The words resonated as pure truth. Brittany was crying quietly. Logan, with his head down, smiled humbly. Elijah continued, "Forgiveness is not weakness. It is the strength of those who understand that hatred is too heavy a burden to carry. I decided to forgive, not to forget what I lived through, but to prevent it from transforming me into something I am not." The auditorium fell silent. Each word seemed to touch a collective wound and, at the same time, heal it. Director Helen stood up and began to applaud. Soon, everyone joined in. The sound was intense, vibrant, almost liberating. Finally, Elijah stepped down from the stage and was greeted by Logan. "You deserve this more than anyone," he said. "No, Logan," Elijah replied with a smile. "We deserve it, because if a mistake can change a life, so can regret." Outside, the sun was already beginning to set. The golden lights reflected in the school windows, and the wind carried the sound of applause that still echoed in the auditorium. Saintford High was no longer the same. Arrogance had given way to empathy, and injustice to the conscience. And as Elijah left the building with the award in his hands, he knew that this recognition was more than just a trophy. It was a symbol, proof that good can spring even from the heart of error, if there is the courage to change. Winter has arrived in Saintford High, and with it came the silence of maturity. The laughter that once echoed in mockery now gave way to quieter, more conscious voices. The group that once considered itself untouchable, Logan, Brittany, and Chase, had disappeared from the hallways for weeks, serving their disciplinary suspension. But the absence, instead of rebellion, brought reflection. When they returned, the world seemed different. No one looked at them with admiration anymore. The former idols of the school now walked among the other students with humility. On the first morning, Logan stopped in front of the school gate and took a deep breath. The cold stung his face, but the weight he felt came from within. "Ready to face it?" Chase asked, adjusting his backpack. "I don't know if anyone's ready for this," Logan replied, looking at the building. "But it's time to begin." They went inside. Some students looked away, others whispered, but most simply watched, not with disdain, but with curiosity. The group that once made others fear them now carried the burden of their own conscience. In the classroom, the social ethics professor, Senior Howard, he interrupted the lesson when the three arrived. "Welcome back," he said calmly. "I think you have a lot to teach this group." The simple phrase carried the weight of someone who knew exactly what they were saying. Logan sat in silence. Shame still burned him, but at the same time he felt a new desire to make amends. In the days that followed, the trio began to participate in the project. Equal voices, no longer as listeners, but as volunteers. The first meeting where they spoke was one of the most crowded since the program began. Logan picked up the microphone with trembling hands. "For a long time I thought that being the richest and most popular meant being the best. But I learned that those who need to belittle others to feel great were never truly great." The auditorium fell silent. He took a deep breath and continued. "I don't want you to forgive me. I want you to learn from my mistake. I wasn't brave when I humiliated someone. I was a coward. And if I'm here today, it's because someone who had every reason to hate me chose to forgive me." The applause came, but not out of empathy. It was out of respect. Brittany was the next to speak. With a choked voice, he confessed, "I used to think that recording and laughing was harmless, that if I wasn't bullying, I wasn't part of it. But today I understand. Whoever films the pain is just as guilty as the one who causes it." Tears welled up in the eyes of some students. Chase finally added, "We thought we were invincible. But nothing destroys faster than arrogance itself. After that night, the change was visible. Logan started attending the school's media lab and began producing educational videos about respect and inclusion. Brittany joined the journalism club and wrote an article titled "The Price of Silence," where he recounted his transformation. Chase began coaching the junior soccer team, teaching discipline and empathy to the young players. One day, during recess, Elijah found the group sitting quietly in the courtyard, chatting peacefully. Logan stood up when he saw him. "You know, Carter, I think you changed more than just the school. You changed us too." Elijah smiled. "Nobody changes anybody, Logan. People only decide to listen when the noise inside them gets too loud." They laughed together without irony. It was the first time that the laughter they shared stemmed not from contempt, but from relief. At the end of that semester, the student council elected Logan, Brittany, and Elijah to coordinate the Empathy Week, an event that would feature speakers, workshops, and discussions about coexistence. The old trinity of the ego had become the trio of reconstruction. And when the event ended, Director Helen went up on stage and said, "This school was saved not by punishment, but by conscience, and conscience is the kind of lesson no one forgets." The audience rose to their feet in applause, and in the middle of the crowd, Elijah and Logan exchanged a silent glance. There were no longer victims or culprits, just two young people who understood that true greatness is born from humility. That day, Saintford High proved that even the darkest stories can turn into light, if someone has the courage to truly change. The spring breeze blew gently through the gardens of Saintford High, scattering petals across the steps of the main building. The school was unrecognizable. The same place that once vibrated with arrogant laughter and venomous whispers now pulsed with a new rhythm, that of transformation. The walls, once covered in posters for parties and championships, now displayed phrases written by the students themselves. Respect is the universal language. There is no greater courage than asking for forgiveness. Empathy is the most beautiful uniform there is. These words did not come from adults or hired speakers, but from the students themselves, the same. Students who had once witnessed the chaos of prejudice. The project Equal Voices, it grew beyond expectations. In just 6 months, it already had over 200 students. Teachers adapted the content of the classes to include discussions about ethics, social history, and diversity. The name of Elijah Carteret had become a symbol of integrity, but what surprised everyone was that he never sought the spotlight. He sat in the back rows, listened more than he spoke, and always returned compliments. With humility. When asked how he felt about changing schools, he would reply simply, "I didn't change the school. The school listened to itself." Meanwhile, Logan's group was also growing in stature as an example. They organized a campaign called "A Day in Your Place," where students would spend an entire shift switching roles. The popular kids with the scholarship students, the athletes with the art students, the children of business owners with the children of employees. The result was powerful. At the end of the activity, the cafeteria was full of hugs, genuine laughter, and conversations that would never have happened before. During the presentation of the results, Logan gave a speech in the auditorium. We spend years looking at others as if they were different. But the truth is, no one understands the weight of another's shoes until they've walked through them. I've learned that empathy isn't pity. It's humanity. The audience gave them a standing ovation. Elijah, seated in the front row, smiled discreetly. That arrogant boy from before now spoke from the heart, and the most beautiful thing was seeing that people were listening. Principal Helen watched everything with pride. Since the incident, her management style had also changed. Now, she actively participated in student meetings, encouraged teachers to listen more, and even created a scholarship program for low-income youth. Saintford High has always been big on the outside, she said at one of the, meetings. But now, finally, it's big on the inside. The impact of this change went beyond the school gates. The media started talking about the school again, but this time in a positive way. News reports highlighted the new culture of inclusion and the social impact of the student project. The name, once tarnished by scandals, had now become synonymous with rebirth. One afternoon, Elijah was called to the principal's office. "There's someone who wants to see you," said the secretary, smiling. When he entered, he found Logan's mother waiting for him. "Mr. Carter," she said softly, "I came to thank you. I watched my son change before my eyes. He became kinder, more human, and I know it all started because of you." Elijah was surprised, not knowing what to say. "Mrs. Whitmore, your son made his own choices." "Yes," she replied, smiling with tears in her eyes, "but you showed the way." That night, the school hosted an event open to the community, the Night of Equality. Parents, students, and teachers packed the gymnasium. The lights were low, the stage decorated with banners made by the students. The event began with a video showing Saintford's journey, from cruel laughter to outstretched hands. Finally, Elijah was invited to speak. He went up on stage to warm applause and said, "We make mistakes. We hurt others, and we regret them. But what defines a school and a person is not the mistake, but what they do afterward. The forgiveness I once gave has returned to me multiplied. And that's what makes us great." Applause echoed through the gymnasium. The principal, moved, discreetly wiped away tears. Logan watched him with respect and pride, aware that the justice karma had brought was not a punishment, it was a lesson. Outside, the school lights reflected on the wet sidewalk, and the wind carried the sound of applause. It was the sound of redemption. It was the sound of a school that had learned to love what it had previously ignored. The years passed. A Saintford High, once a symbol of privilege and arrogance, it had become a national benchmark for inclusion and empathy. Its story was told at educational conferences, studied in universities, and most importantly, lived every day by students who grew up within this new philosophy. At the heart of this change, one name remained as a constant echo: Elijah Carter. He graduated with honors, but he didn't leave school as someone who wanted to leave the past behind. He returned several times, not as a student, but as a mentor. He became a speaker, activist, and consultant for school programs on diversity and ethics. In the schools he visited, he used to begin his lectures with a simple phrase: "What they did to me once hurt me, but what I did with it healed me." Saintford High now had a new space in the center of campus, the Elijah Carter Center for Empathy and Coexistence. It was inaugurated 2 years after his graduation. It was an open space, full of plants, pictures with inspiring quotes, and a wall with photos that told the story of the school's transformation. At the top of the entrance, in gold lettering, it read, "Here, respect is the starting point of every conversation." During the opening ceremony, Director Helen, nearing retirement, gave an emotional speech. "When Elijah arrived at our school, we received him with prejudice and blindness, but he gave us back something we didn't deserve: forgiveness. And that forgiveness became the foundation of everything Saintford stands for today." Applause filled the courtyard. Among the audience were Logan, Brittany, and Chase, now adults, graduated and following different paths, but united by a shared memory. After the ceremony, the four met at the foot of the main staircase, the same place where it all began years ago. "Remember when this was our territory of arrogance?" Brittany joked with a nostalgic smile. Elijah laughed. "And look at us now. It's like another world." Logan, more seriously, replied, "It's not another world. It's the same. The difference is that we've finally learned to see it." The group fell silent for a moment, observing the new students arriving. Diverse young people from all backgrounds, living together without barriers. Chase sighed. "You know what's crazy? Karma could have destroyed us, but in the end, it only taught us something." Elijah nodded. "That's what karma does. It doesn't punish, it shows." In the following months, Elijah's name spread even further. His book, The Color of Truth, it was published and became a reference in educational programs. In an interview for local TV, he summarized his journey. "I'm not a hero. I just did what everyone should do. Choose to be better than what they made me." At Saintford High, new students learned its history as part of the curriculum. The episode that began as an embarrassment had become the institution's greatest lesson. And every year on April 12th, the date the original incident occurred, the school celebrated it. Empathy Day, in homage to the change that was born from pain and blossomed into compassion. During the first celebration, Elijah was invited to speak again. He stepped onto the same stage where, years before, he had been humiliated and unjustly judged. But now the entire auditorium welcomed him standing. He took a deep breath and said, "I don't want to be applauded for forgiving. I want to be remembered for why I needed to do it. Because every scornful laugh, every superior look, every humiliating word, all of that destroys more than you can imagine. But respect rebuilds what hatred tries to erase." The words were followed by a reverent silence. Tears discreetly streamed down the faces of teachers and students. Outside, the sky was golden, the sun reflecting off the school windows. Elijah stepped down from the stage and walked to the courtyard, feeling the light breeze touch his face. Logan caught up with him and placed his hand on his shoulder. "You know you changed our lives, right?" Elijah smiled. "I didn't change anyone, Logan. I just showed them a mirror. The rest, you did yourselves." The two stood there watching the bustling campus. Children, laughter, diversity, unity. A vivid portrait of a school that rose from its own mistakes. At that moment, Elijah realized that his legacy was not fame or recognition. It was the seed he planted, and which now blossomed in every heart willing to see others as equals. A campus, yes, Saintford High, was bathed in a golden light that late afternoon. The distant sound of students laughing, the wind rustling the flags on the facade, and the soft echo of footsteps in the hallways formed a tranquil symphony, the kind of peace that only emerges after much chaos. That day, the school was celebrating 10th anniversary of the Equal Voices Project. The auditorium was packed. Parents, alumni, teachers, and students gathered to celebrate the milestone that transformed the institution's history. On stage, the illuminated sign displayed the name that everyone respected, Elijah Carter, the man who turned silence into change. Elijah, now 30 years old, climbed the steps slowly. His hair was slightly gray, his gaze serene. The same boy who had once been the target of humiliation was about to close a chapter that began with tears and ended with purpose. Director Helen, now retired, was waiting for him, standing beside the podium. "You've become the best teacher this school could have, Elijah," she said, her voice breaking. "How?" Smiled. "I just tried to be the student I once needed to be." The audience applauded, and the silence that followed was absolute. Elijah looked around and saw faces he would never forget. Logan, now a sociology professor. Brittany, an award-winning journalist for her series of reports on cyberbullying. And Chase, a volunteer coach for the junior team, teaching boys to compete respectfully. Karma had done its work, not to punish, but to shape. Elijah took a deep breath and began to speak. "When I first arrived here, Saintford High made me feel small. But today, looking at all this, I realize that nothing can diminish someone who refuses to let hate win." His voice echoed softly, yet firmly. "I've seen the worst in people, and also the best. I discovered that no one is born cruel, but many get lost trying to appear strong. And it took falling for all of us to learn to get up together." The lights adjusted, focusing on his face. "Many people ask me what I learned from all this. I learned that forgiveness isn't about who was wrong. It's about who decides to move on in peace. And that true power lies not in who wins a fight, but in who transforms an enemy into an example." A profound silence returned. Discreet tears slid amidst the restrained applause. Elijah concluded, "If there's one thing I want to leave with you, it's simple. Never use pain as an excuse to hurt others. Use it as a reason to heal." The applause was a standing ovation, long and deafening. The entire gymnasium seemed to vibrate. Helen wiped away her tears, smiling. Logan stood up, clapping loudly. Brittany recorded the moment, but now with pride, no longer with mockery. When the event ended, Elijah walked alone across the courtyard. The sun slowly set, tinging the school windows with gold. He stopped before the plaque that now adorned the entrance to the main building. Justice is not about punishing. It's about teaching, and forgiveness is the purest form of justice. The wind blew gently, and at Chiu. That moment, Elijah understood that his mission was complete. There was no more resentment, only gratitude. There were no more wounds, only lessons learned. And Saintford High, once a symbol of inequality, was now living proof that karma doesn't destroy Educa. True justice does not seek revenge. It seeks conscience. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it illuminates the path ahead. And karma, it's just life reminding us that every heart can still change.